Sunny days ahead at the Henry Vilas Zoo. Today, the zoo unveiled a new solar panel pavilion, a project that helps progress their climate change goals. The pavilion helps to reduce energy costs and further shows that clean energy initiatives can blend in seamlessly into public places like the zoo. Dane County Executive Melissa Agard says you don't even notice them sometimes because they're so embedded into these spaces. This pavilion takes the zoo's conservation efforts one step further by allowing guests to see it working in real time.
Today is about what can happen when people invest in places that bring our community together. When we dream about what is possible rather than accepting what people say is too big of a challenge to overcome.
Agard says the zoo has a goal of becoming fossil fuel free by the year 2040.